Now, once we figured out what this top dollar is, and this is so important, I would say a lot of new investors get hurt when they first start fixing and flipping houses because they may tend to think they can get more than what's out there just because they don't know how to look at the data accurately. They may look at the wrong comp. They may look at the house on the wrong side of the invisible line. They're looking at the house on the east side of 7th East, but they're really a home that's on, let's just say, 2nd East, and so they're pulling comps, past 7th East, so though that data is going to be probably not the best data to pull. They could be, I've seen a lot of investors that force a deal to work when they're newer. They want to do a deal so bad so that they will just say, the top dollar is probably $400,000, but at $400,000, there's not a lot of meat on the bone. But I bet I can get $415. I bet I can get $415 because we're going to make it a little bit nicer than everybody, and then move forward with the transaction. The house doesn't appraise at $415; it appraises at $4. And now they're walking away with $5,000-$6,000 profit on the transaction, which hardly makes it worth doing. And that's if they come out positive, right? I've seen that time and time again with newer investors where their profit is so minimal, but they'll admit to it. They said, "Yeah, we really just forced the deal because we just wanted to get it done." So you don't want to do that. The ARV is so important. Literally, this is why I can do an analysis in like 5 to 10 minutes and know if I'm going to even bother moving forward, because I know the minimum that I want to make on a transaction for it to even be worth my while to move forward. So once we've determined what the ARV is, then basically we work backwards from there. Now, you're going to minus 10% off of that ARV. This is a conservative analysis. I always analyze worst case scenario. If it's better, great, then I just made more money. I never analyze the best case scenario, because if it's not, then I lost money, or at least my profit's significantly lower. So the reason why we minus 10% off of what we think we can sell it for, so we're going to keep math really easy here. We're going to just pretend we can sell a house for $100,000, okay? Not likely here in Salt Lake City or almost anywhere in Utah. You're not going to find a house for $100,000 all remodeled. But for the sake of this example, for easy math, we're going to take $100,000 as our ARV. The value of the home, once it's fixed up, we'll turn around and sell for $100,000. I'm going to minus 10%. Why? Because 6% is going to be paid to real estate agents, right? Realtor is going to help you market this property. Real estate agents will typically take 3% to give to the buyer's agent who's bringing you the buyer, and then they're going to make 3% as well. So that 6% gets divided into 2 real estate agents, so you're going to pay 6% in real estate agent fees. Then you've got closing costs. As a seller, your closing cost when you go to the title company is typically going to be about 1%. As a buyer, buyers typically have a 3% closing cost. Their closing costs are a little bit higher because they're typically utilizing a loan. They're getting a loan from somebody, and so those fees are a little bit more expensive because there's a fee to borrow money. Going to the bank and borrowing money is not free. So there's a fee. So if you have 1% that you pay, 3% that the buyer pays, that's a total of 4%. Now I know you're wondering, well, why am I calculating the 3% that the buyer pays? Well, because typically in the market that we're in right now, buyers will oftentimes ask sellers to pay their closing costs. For anybody who's ever shopped recently or who has sold recently knows this. As a buyer, you asked the seller most likely if they'd be willing to pay your closing costs. If not all of it, some of it. And as a seller, you probably know because you received offers of buyers asking you to pay their closing costs. And again, if not all of it, some of it. So I'm planning worst case scenario. I'm planning that when I turn around to sell this, the buyer's going to ask me for the 3% closing cost to be paid for them. So if that's the case, then worst case scenario for me paying closing costs is 4%. Now, if that is how the transaction plays out, then I've already calculated my analysis when I go to sell, knowing what my profit will be, giving up that extra 3% to pay for the buyer. However, if I can negotiate, if we're in a a hot market where we get multiple offers, the nice thing about that is a lot of buyers, to make their offer more competitive when they're shopping, will hypothetically not ask a seller to pay their closing costs. So let's just say you get as a seller, you receive 2 offers, both at the same price. Both of them offer you a full price at $100,000. In our example, we're using $100,000. One is asking you to pay 3% of their closing costs, all of it, and the other one's saying, hey man, I got the money, you don't need to pay my closing costs at all. You're obviously going to net more by accepting the offer of the guy who's going to pay his own closing costs versus the guy who doesn't. So, if I've done my analysis where I'm planning worst case scenario to pay for the buyer who's going to ask me, but then I get in a multiple offer situation, which pretty much happens a lot if you're a freshly remodeled home, you're the nicest house on the market, everybody wants your home, then you're probably going to get an offer that is not asking to have you pay their closing costs, which means you just built in an extra 3% profit, which is fantastic. That can pay for the real estate agent fee that you're going to be paying, half of the real estate agent fee that you're going to be paying one of the realtors, right? So I plan for the worst, but negotiate to try and get the best. So that's why we minus 10%. So now we have our ARV, we minus 10%, which are those closing costs. Then we minus the repairs, whatever we think we can sell it, remodel it for. So if it's going to cost $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 to fix up the home, then from there I'm minusing that amount, right? Because that's an expense that I've got to make sure I get back. So if I spend, let's just say hypothetically for this example, $20,000 into the remodel, then in our example of $100,000 ARV, I've minus 10%, which is $10,000. That's why we're using $100,000 to keep the math easy. Now I'm minusing the $20,000 to fix it up. Okay, so now we've minus $20,000, so we're now down to $70,000. From here, all it is now is I just need to minus what I want to make. So if I want to make $20,000, then I'm going to minus another $20,000, and now I know what I need to offer. That is if you're paying cash. You have the cash in hand to do it yourself and you don't need to borrow a loan. That's going to be the cleanest analysis if you're a cash buyer investor. However, if you're going to leverage hard money, you're going to go out and get a loan or private money or whatever money. As we mentioned earlier, money's not free to borrow. So if you go out and get a loan, then you also then will have to take in consideration the cost it's going to the cost you're going to incur to borrow that money. So if it's going to cost you $10,000 to borrow hard money or private money or whatever money for a period of 4, 5, 6 months, you're going to need to take that in consideration as well, so you can offer accordingly to minus that expense if that's something that you need to do to make the profit that you want. So the reason why I say, as far as profit margin minus what you want to make, a lot of let's say educators out there will say, you take your ARV, after repair value, times it by 70% minus your repairs, and now you have your MAO, M-A-O, maximum available offer. You've got your MAO. Well, the reason why I don't use that formula is because every house is different, and if I'm going to go into a house and do a full-blown tear down walls, change out the kitchen completely, rip out the bathrooms, put them in, then yes, I'm going to want to make a larger profit because I'm taking higher risk doing more to the home, versus the house that I'm going to go in and go, wow, this is one of those paint and carpets. I don't need to make, 20% profit on this, or whatever profit you are, using based off of a percentage calculation. I can now decide this is what I'd want to make if I flipped this house because there's so little work, if that makes sense. So, take the ARV, minus 10% in your closing costs, minus your repairs, minus what you want to make, and again, if you're using hard money, minus whatever that expense will be, and now you know your MAO, maximum available offer that you can submit. And once you know your MAO, a quick conversation with the seller will tell you how close you even are as far as potentially buying this home as a flip. Now, if you're really, really far, there's other strategies that you could utilize. It might not be best for a flip, but if you did, let's say, some creative financing, you could buy the property long-term as a rental. There's also ways to do creative financing on a flip so that you don't have to go borrow hard money. But by just doing this quick analysis in 5 to 10 minutes, having a conversation with the seller, knowing what they want for the home, I can gauge how close I am to even structuring this deal to making it happen, or if I'm so far out, we're so far apart on what I could offer, on what they want for the home, maybe they're being unrealistic or as far as the condition of their home, whatever it may be, then I know that that might not be a house I want to spend as much time trying to work and get done, if that makes sense. Okay, so it's time for a commercial break. When we come back though, we are going to talk about a big announcement, for me at least, that I want to share with you guys that kind of evolved last week when we had Jonas Tsuji as our special guest. For those of you who may recognize that name, Jonas was on Survivor, I don't remember, like 10 years ago. So he was, he's from Utah County. He represented Utah on Survivor. So for some of you, you may remember him. But before Jonas was a real estate professional, he was in the food industry. He used to be a sushi chef. And after the show was over and the mics were turned off, we started catching up, talking. I haven't spoken to him for a while, just due to the whole social distancing. I haven't spoken to a lot of people for a while. But anyways, I kind of shared with him what I'm working on as a new side project, and I have been asking almost everyone I've been in contact with who I know as a friend since January. Keep in mind, we're in May. Since January, if they knew anyone who's ever pursued this type of product in this type of industry. And nobody I know has ever done anything like this until last week when I spoke to Jonas. He shared with me he's actually done it. So I now officially have some first steps on action taking that I'm going to be taking over the next year, I don't know, first several, or maybe 12 months, 24 months, I don't know how long it's going to take to make this happen, but want to share what this product is with you guys live on radio when we get back from commercial break. With smartphones and technology making life a little easier, the Snap Leash has also been designed to make life a little easier for you and your pup. Whether you're out on a stroll in the park, or possibly a walk through the city, or maybe even a hike up in the mountains, the Snap Leash is the perfect leash for you. The Snap Leash can easily and conveniently convert into 7 types of leashes, making the Snap Leash the most convenient leash in the world. What other leash do you know that is 7 leashes in one? The Snap Leash having appearances on the Today Show in New York City, TV 47 in Dallas, Texas, and ABC4 right here on Midday, Utah. You are definitely going to want to take a peek at what the Snap Leash can do for you and your best friend. Make life a little easier for you and your pup, and visit www.snapleash.com today.